Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Rob McCleary. We are excited to once again sponsor this year's virtual Bourbon and Bacon event benefiting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
And while we all can't be together in person, it is still so important for all of us to support the foundation and their mission to make cystic fibrosis stand for cure found.
Thank you for all your support, and we look forward to seeing you at Binny's again next year.
Cheers.
Hi everybody, it's Brett Pontani with Binny's Beverage Depot. It's November 5th. Very disappointed that we're not hosting a great party to raise money for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, but I have every confidence we'll be back next year. Started working with Carmen and the group 5 years ago, and it's turned into one of our biggest and most important fundraisers of the year.
I first began supporting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation because I'm an uncle to two amazing young boys that were both diagnosed with CF when they were born. And having it hit so close to home, it just really meant a lot to do all that I could and you know, all that we could do to support the foundation and the mission.
One of our favorite parts about Bourbon and Bacon is the camaraderie that you get, seeing friendly faces. There's award-winning restaurants and bourbon that we always get to try and share fun laughs. But the most important part is raising awareness and money, and hope and appreciate your contribution to the cause today.
My inspiration is my niece, Stacy Matenko. When she was born, she was diagnosed with CF, and we didn't know if she'd make it through childhood. Through all the progress that's been made, she's 34 years old. This couldn't happen without the support of everyone out there supporting CF.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Rob McCleary. We are excited to once again sponsor this year's virtual Bourbon and Bacon event benefiting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
And while we all can't be together in person, it is still so important for all of us to support the foundation and their mission to make cystic fibrosis stand for cure found.
Thank you for all your support, and we look forward to seeing you at Binny's again next year.
Cheers.
Hi everybody, it's Brett Pontani with Binny's Beverage Depot. It's November 5th. I'm very disappointed that we're not hosting a great party to raise money for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, but I have every confidence we'll be back next year. Started working with Carmen and the group 5 years ago, and it's turned into one of our biggest and most important fundraisers of the year.
I first began supporting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation because I'm an uncle to two amazing young boys that were both diagnosed with CF when they were born. And having it hit so close to home, it just really meant a lot to do all that I could and you know, all that we could do to support the foundation and the mission.
One of our favorite parts about Bourbon and Bacon is the camaraderie that you get, seeing friendly faces. There's award-winning restaurants and bourbon that we always get to try and share fun laughs. But the most important part is raising awareness and money, and hope and appreciate your contribution to the cause today.
My inspiration is my niece, Stacy Matenko. When she was born, she was diagnosed with CF, and we didn't know if she'd make it through childhood. Through all the progress that's been made, she's 34 years old. This couldn't happen without the support of everyone out there supporting CF.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And I'm Rob McClary. We are excited to once again sponsor this year's virtual Bourbon and Bacon event, benefiting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation.
And while we all can't be together in person, it is still so important for all of us to support the foundation and their mission to make cystic fibrosis stand for cure found.
Thank you for all your support, and we look forward to seeing you at Binny's again next year.
Cheers.
Hi everybody, it's Brett Pontani with Binny's Beverage Depot. It's November 5th. I'm very disappointed that we're not hosting a great party to raise money for Cystic Fibrosis Foundation, but I have every confidence we'll be back next year. Started working with Carmen and the group 5 years ago, and it's turned into one of our biggest and most important fundraisers of the year.
I first began supporting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation because I'm an uncle to two amazing young boys that were both diagnosed with CF when they were born. And having it hit so close to home, it just really meant a lot to do all that I could and you know, all that we could do to support the foundation and the mission.
One of our favorite parts about Bourbon and Bacon is the camaraderie that you get, seeing friendly faces. There's award-winning restaurants in Bourbon that we always get to try and share fun laughs, but the most important part is raising awareness and money, and hope and appreciate your contribution to the cause today.
My inspiration is my niece, Stacy Matanko. When she was born, she was diagnosed with CF, and we didn't know if she'd make it through childhood. Through all the progress that's been made, she's 34 years old. This couldn't happen without the support of everyone out there supporting CF.
Hey, welcome everybody. We're off and running. Welcome to the 6th annual Bourbon and Bacon event benefiting the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation of Greater Illinois. I am your host and one of the co-chairs of this event. My name is Carmen DeFalco from ESPN Chicago, the Carmen and Yurko Show. It's obviously very different this year. We're so happy that so many of you have decided to join us though on this Zoom call. I know a lot of you have made this a regular thing year in and year out, and I'm so appreciative and so thankful. And it really has turned out to be a great event, and we hope that we're all back at Binny's again next year. But we're going to make the best out of this hour. We have 3 incredible speakers. You know, if you've been to events in the past, you've probably heard my spiel or you remember it. Very humble beginnings. This started back in 2015 at the Binny's Tasting Room in Lincoln Park. Just an idea, you know, why not get a bunch of people together for a fun night? We can drink bourbon, eat bacon, and raise money for a great cause. And there were about 70 of us. I think we raised about $7,000. In the now 5 years that we've been doing this, though, it grew from those 70 people to about, I don't know, I think it was almost 350 last year in 2019. And we have raised over $200,000 to date. I can't even begin to tell you how grateful I am for everybody chipping in this year in such a crazy year, and how much we've already raised going into the evening tonight. And there will be a couple of opportunities a little bit later on as we move on through the hour where you can donate, you can support the cause if you like. I have to give big props to all of our sponsors that continue to make this happen each and every year. We couldn't do this without them, and they're a huge component of this. Thanks again to Dude Wipes for being back, Morgan Harbor Construction, the McClary family, Stuart Feldman, and then of course our in-kind sponsors, American Airlines and Binny's Beverage Depot, which has just been a tremendous partner to us, allowing us to use the space, that beautiful space, Brett Pontani and his entire crew, and everything they do to help facilitate all the vendors that are there, all the great whiskey that we normally get to taste. And hopefully, again, we're right back there a year from now. And a shout out to all the restaurants. I mean, they have meant so much to this event. I think people talk about that more than anything else. The amazing, creative, wonderful things that the chefs do with the bacon and the food each and every year. I mean, it really wows people. They're hurting as much as anybody right now. Do what you can to support all the great restaurants and all the great chefs in the restaurants that have helped us over the years. I want to say hi to the Adventures Club Bourbon Society, my guys. I'm a proud member, Chicago's only Bourbon Society. Check them out on Facebook. I know we've got some guys in the Sacadat Bourbon Room watching tonight. We've got some guys in Sandal's backyard, part of the documentary discussion club, watching tonight. That is kind of like Oprah's book club without Oprah and the books and the free cars, but otherwise it's exactly the same. Shout out to all you, all my colleagues and coworkers, Yurko, Waddle and Sylvie, Meller, Cap and Hoodie, Black and Abdallah, everybody at the radio station who constantly supports me in this event, Mike Thomas and Craig Karmazin for allowing me to use the airwaves to help promote this event and raise money for a really wonderful cause. So I want to remind everybody this is being recorded tonight. I think I'm legally obligated to say that. This webinar is being recorded. I can't believe we have so many people that have jumped onto this. It's just, it's truly amazing. Touches my heart. Thanks so much. And thanks for helping to keep the spirit of this alive in a year when we can't be together. Again, we'd have like 350 of us all partying, all doing something great for the CF Foundation. But we're still doing it, and that really does mean a lot. I want to also real quick thank the committee. We have a wonderful crew. We've been together for a lot of years now. We didn't have a committee that first year, but slowly but surely we've put together an amazing group of people that work really, really hard, and I appreciate all their efforts to put this event on every year. My co-chair, Stuart Feldman, you saw him in the video if you were watching, Brad Feldman as well, Vince Coletti, my brother Tony DeFalco, Dan Cook, Chris Yenchek, Jen McCleary, Kelly Smith, Brett Pontani at Binny's, who you also saw in the video. And then the people at the foundation who don't get enough, I don't know, love probably, that they have worked tirelessly this year to continue in this crazy year to put events like this on and to continue to raise money for the CF Foundation and this important cause. It's really tremendous. So to Meg Schneider and to Hannah Clinert, Tyler Reiner, Sarah Evans, Will Courtney, everybody at the foundation, mad props, much love to you. Couldn't do this stuff without you. I mean, they have been incredible, just facilitating all of this logistically in a crazy year. So we've got 3 great speakers, as I mentioned. Follow along in the chat, everybody. If you've got questions, dump them into that chat. We'll be interactive all night, and some of the questions will be read to our panelists. Our first panelist is a dear friend. I've gotten to know him because of this event and because of my love for bourbon and rye whiskey. He has been, I believe, every year since the very beginning. He is one of the founding partners of Whiskey Acres out in DeKalb, one of the great craft distillers right here in Illinois. You know, so much goes into, you know, before it arrives in this beautiful glass that we can sit here and drink. I mean, I think we may take it for granted. You've got these little seeds of grain, and then there's nature, and there's science, and there's craftsmanship and artistry and time and patience. And there is so much that goes into just that little seed becoming this. And that is the mission at Whiskey Acres. Nick's a great dude, and he is going to be our first speaker and talk about what they do in DeKalb at Whiskey Acres. So Nick, I turn it over to you, my man.
Thanks, Carm. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to be asked to participate in this. All those folks that you've thanked already, I'd like to thank again, and thank you and Binny's for giving us the opportunity to connect and do these awesome programs to support an awesome cause. When you reached out to ask me to do this and told me who else was speaking, I thought, well, what in the world would I speak to bourbon when Freddie Noe is going to be part of this conversation? So I wanted to make sure that we carved out kind of a little bit of an angle on what we are and what we do, and how that impacts the final product that we produce. But first, if we could hit to the next slide, I think it's important, and skip to one more. I want to introduce my team and founding partners. So I'm the knucklehead there on the right. That's my business partner, Jim Walter, and his son, Jamie Walter. The 3 of us are the founding members of Whiskey Acres Distilling Company that we started on Jim and Jamie's farm in DeKalb, Illinois. Their family has been on that farm since the 1930s, and have been raising high quality grain there. This last weekend, Jim finished his 52nd harvest. Jamie joined the farm about 20 years ago and has been farming with Jim ever since. And my family has a separate farm about 100 miles downstate. And so the 3 of us got into distilling as farmers first. And that is the reason we started the distillery, is because we really want to showcase the high quality grain that we're able to grow in Illinois, what's often referred to as the buckle of the Corn Belt. And so Whiskey Acres is really an extension of the farm. If you hit the next slide, another important cast of characters I want to introduce is my beautiful wife, Amanda, and my twins, Gunnar and Everly. They are what drive me and make me get out of bed and aspire to make the business the best possible. So I just share these because we are the people behind the products, and I think it gives you better appreciation for what you'll get to enjoy in the end. So let's hit to the next slide. So what we often refer to as our business, we are an estate distillery in DeKalb, Illinois, and we call ourselves a seed to spirit distillery. And we make a distinction because our process for making whiskey begins with the seed. And so we're going to get just a little bit geeky here. What you're looking at is a 24-row John Deere corn planter. If you were standing next to it, that thing is 60 feet wide. There's 30 inches in between each row. Those large yellow tanks in the middle there hold about 100 bushels of seed each, and they use a vacuum system to push the seed out to each one of those individual row units that drops one seed every 6 inches at about 1.75 inches deep. So to help you kind of appreciate what that means is every football field, which is essentially an acre, is we're putting about 34,000 seeds. Each one of those is geolocated. There's a measurement system that's got an eye that's sending information to an iPad that's sending information to the cloud. So we have all this real-time information of weather conditions, soil conditions, planter speed, all these kind of things that are integral in ensuring that we're growing the best crop possible and giving it the best start possible. Let's hit to the next slide. We're doing that in June or in May or April, depending on the what Mother Nature is going to allow us to do. Let's fast forward. We've got the crop planted. We've dealt with insects and disease and all those things, and it's harvest time now. What we're looking at here is just some different pictures from harvest. The picture on the top left is a picture from the combine. The picture of on the right, top right is our combine, and that's a John Deere that's about 10 years old. And even at 10 years old, that machine, the brains that run that machine have more lines of code than a 747. So to really give you an appreciation for the technology that goes into successfully growing and harvesting a crop, it involves a lot of intuition and experience on the farmer side of things. And we've really had to evolve to embrace technology and allow that to become better managers and better farmers. If we look at the picture on the bottom left, what that is the combine unloading on the go into about a 1,200 bushel auger cart. So the challenge at harvest time is you've got a finite amount of time before the snow comes, essentially. And so what we do here is that combine essentially runs 14 to 16 hours a day. And we use this auger wagon to unload the crop into that wagon in real time, so that the machine never has to stop. And then there's somebody in the tractor that's pulling that blue wagon that takes it to the end of the field where you've got a semi truck there. And that semi truck gets loaded with about 56,000 pounds of grain and gets taken back to the farm. And so that is very, very, very briefly and very, very oversimplified process of the corn crop from the field as a seed into the semi as grain. Let's hit the next slide here. As farmers here, we're generally planting about 16 to 24 different varieties of yellow dent corn a year. And if you look at the picture or the ear of corn on the left, that's an example of yellow dent corn. Not all corn is created equal. Some have better disease tolerance or drought tolerance. Some dry down faster, some have more starch, some have more protein. And we use the farm as proving grounds to decide which corn that we're going to grow that makes the best whiskey possible. We've taken what is typically 16 to 24 varieties of corn we grow every year and narrowed that down to about 3 that we use for whiskey corn. But because we really also want to kind of get a little bit geeky, we also grow what we call grains for our heirloom series or for our artisan series. So this second picture here is our blue popcorn. Little insider's tip, I think the third Friday and Saturday in December, we're releasing a a 97 proof 4-year-old version of bourbon made with blue popcorn. This next one here is a Oaxacan green corn. It's a Oaxacan variety out of the Oaxacan region of Mexico. And believe it or not, the kernels on that actually give us a bourbon that has a little bit of a rye spice. Far right, that white cob there is actually seed that we got from the Monticello estate. It's called Cox Prolific. It was developed by General Cox, one of Thomas Jefferson's favorite generals. And somewhere in recent history, somebody found some seed, brought that seed back to life and sent it to us. And we're going to make some whiskey out of it. Let's hit the next slide. So we have, we brought the grain back to the farm, and then we need to mill it. And milling the grain is just a lot like milling coffee, and that the fresher you mill it, the more robust and stronger the nose is. And so there's generally no more than 48 hours between when we mill the grain to when we're actually putting it into a mash cooker. Let's hit next. This is a shot of the distillery. If we kind of look from right to left, the picture on the far right is our 500-gallon mash tun, and those are 4 500-gallon fermenters. And then the far left there is our 500-gallon pot still. We actually partnered with Dave Pickerel, and many of you folks know him. You know, rest in peace, Dave. He was a great mentor for us to help go from aspirational farmers wanting to make a distilled product on our farm to functional, and he really helped us to ground truth our ideas and shoehorn this distillery into an existing building that we had. But what's really fun about what we do and the way we're sized is we are able to, everything here, the way it's sized is a 500-gallon mash yields a 500-gallon fermentation, which yields a 500-gallon distillation, which gives us a single barrel. So we truly can isolate variables from the grain into the mash to the final distillate, so that we can fine tune the way that we grow what we grow for the distilling operation. Let's hit next. This is just an idiot on the day we put the still together. I was in there putting in the impeller blade. I will tell you that to make sure that if you're ever touring a distillery, to make sure that the still does not look like that, that's an indicator that it's not operating. But that beautiful, beautiful shine is now kind of a darker patina that looks like it's made a lot of whiskey. Let's hit next here. One thing that I think a lot of folks don't appreciate in the distilling world is the amount of paperwork that goes into this. Kristen, the gal there on the bottom of the picture next to me, is my business partner's wife, and she was actually the first employee we hired literally to do the paperwork. We have to account for every pound of grain that comes in and every ounce of alcohol that leaves, and account for any discrepancies between, do we have grain spillage, do we have whiskey spillage, did something break? And it's truly, truly a challenge, but truly something that we embrace and are proud to legally report everything that we do. Hit the next slide here. The almost final stage of what we do is we have a couple rack houses on site. This is just a kind of a side profile of one of them. Both of our rack houses are old grain bins. They're made of corrugated steel that they were originally built to hold bulk corn, and they were underutilized. And we were looking into how we can age whiskey. We decided to throw some in here, and quickly found that this was ideal because of the temperature changes we have here in Illinois. These barrels that we're looking at in this picture have actually been as hot as 120 degrees and as cold as about -30. And so that oppression and of heat changes and vapor pressure changes really helps to give us a unique flavor profile. Let's hit next here. The final thing that we do is we bottle by hand, and we have I got a phone that's ringing here. We have folks that come and help us. This is all pre-COVID. I didn't even know this phone worked. And we can do about 600 bottles an hour, and it's a ton of fun. Hit next here. We also have a visitor center on site that was built in January of 19. It's very much underutilized right now because of COVID restrictions. But this Friday and this Saturday and this Sunday, we're utilizing our outdoor space for one final whiskey garden run where you can enjoy the outdoors, and we've got a food truck and some cocktails, and really we'll have a great night or great afternoon. The true final thing that we do here is enjoy and taste. So let's hit the next slide. We're very proud of the fact that we grow everything and control every part of that process, we've never sourced any whiskey to get us to where we are today, and have been very, very patient to come out with our bottle and bond bourbon. What is pictured in front of you is available at Binny's and many of our other retail partners. But what's really special about this is that not only is it bottle and bond, and we manage the seasons in which we bottle it, but we also manage the growing seasons. So as we release new iterations, you'll see the tax strip on it will say Harvest 2014 or 2015 or 2016, and it's really to kind of help differentiate one product to the next and sort of create vintages. When we did our practice run through this, they asked me to do a tasting, and I said, I own the place. I'm going to tell you all the good things about it. But instead, what I do is I want to quote Carmen on his tasting of the bottle and bond. And Carmen said that on the nose, there's pronounced cherry note with breakfast biscuits. And so I'll agree with that. And then the mouthfeel and palate has a ton of fresh cherries with oak spice, a very, very full mouthfeel, with a long finish and dark chocolate. And that, my friends, is seed to spirit in 12 minutes. And my only ask for you guys is to continue to support the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. There is a ton of work that goes into this. And if you could, pick up a bottle of our stuff at Binny's, and let's raise a glass to this next year in person. Thank you. And I'm now going to turn it over to Chris Yenchek.
Actually, Nick, hi, this is Olivia. Before we pass it along to Chris, we have a couple audience questions for you.
Okay.
I want to say a lot of compliments about how good everything tastes or is currently tasting. And you mentioned that this would all be available to purchase at Binny's, but we have one question wondering if it'd be possible to purchase anywhere in Ohio or maybe online.
We're not distributed in Ohio yet, and I'd love to sell it to you online, but you need to call some of our recently elected legislators to get some of the state of Illinois laws changed. My wife's best friends live in Cleveland and come visit it with us with some frequency. So nick@whiskeyacres.com, I may be able to find you a mule to get stuff over there, but I can't do it directly through any legal channels right now.
Thanks, Nick.
Thank you. Chris, I think it's all yours.
All righty. That's great stuff. Thank you, Nick. Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Yenchek. I'm here tonight not because I have a direct connection to someone with cystic fibrosis, but rather my wife and I are both carriers of CF. And we discovered this when we were expecting our first child, which led me to play a role in doing what I could to help drive fundraising and awareness for the Cystic Fibrosis Foundation. And really since then, I've been involved with multiple events and helped to fundraise, and now I'm a member of the chapter board. I'm really excited to be here tonight, but I'm not the show. I want to get it to what I'm really excited about, and that's passing it along to my fellow colleague at Beam Suntory, Greg Butera, who's our very best Maker's Mark diplomat at Beam. So Greg, let me pass it on to you.
All right, thank you very much, Chris. Excited to be with you tonight, and really honored to be a part of this event supporting such a great cause. Coming from you live from a random office that I don't generally occupy in the middle of Louisiana. Business carried me out of town, but I wanted to make sure that I could chime in and show you how to make a Boulevardier with Maker's Mark and talk a little bit about the brand. So it's actually really awesome that Nick from Whiskey Acres spoke a little bit before me, because I have a ton of appreciation for what they do, and a lot of the small craft distillers kind of remind Maker's Mark of our roots and keep us grounded. The stuff they're doing is really progressive and innovative, and they have a kind of spirit of can do and hustle that that keeps us going the way that our founders would have wanted. So the brand was founded, Maker's Mark, by a husband and wife team in 1953, Bill Samuel Sr. and his wife Margie. We really talk about them as the co-founders. They were equal partners. Bill was a fourth generation commercial distiller. His great grandfather started the T.W. Samuels and Sons distillery in 1844. So the term bourbon really didn't enter the parlance until about 1830. The Samuels family was one of the few Kentucky families that helped to build the industry in the early days. So Bill Sr. inherited the distillery in 1936, and ran it for about 7 years, and then kind of retired to life as a country gentleman. After 10 years of sitting on the back porch, sipping whiskey and going to the races, his wife Margie said, "Bill, you're still a young guy and I'm tired of tripping over your day drunk around the house. Maybe at least find a hobby or something." And Bill said, I've thought a lot about my perfect bourbon and just where the category is at right now. He said everything that was available at that time, this was 1952, 53, everything was kind of a bottom shelf spirit. It was all like a goal-oriented proposition, grip and rip it, efficient inebriation. And Bill said, why don't we create a bourbon that's a little softer, a little sweeter. He didn't use terms like craft or premium, but that was sort of the impetus, something that was an elevation of the entire category. So, so Bill set about creating a recipe and a distillate. He found our little distillery in the middle of nowhere, central Kentucky in Loretto, and essentially started a hobby distillery. His wife Margie, like I said, they were very much equal partners. She then kind of took the reins and developed our brand identity. So she created the shape of the bottle to resemble an alembic cognac pot still, designed the label, our fonts, and also created the signature red wax dip. So the name Maker's Mark, which Margie came up with, refers to the little Maker's Mark that was stamped on the bottom of fine pewter service pieces, like platters and pitchers, which she collected. She said that any good pewter house would, these are like Victorian vintage pieces, would put just a subtle brand stamp to indicate quality. So she said, if we're making a whiskey that emphasizes craftsmanship, let's call it Maker's Mark and kind of design our own Maker's Mark. So this is just a little bit of trivia that's fun to take away. You've probably seen the SIV logo there. That's our Maker's Mark. The S stands for Samuel's family. The IV is Roman numeral 4 for fourth generation commercial distiller. The star with the circle around it is for Star Hill Farm, the family estate. There are a few breaks in the circle. This is the real piece of trivia. One of the breaks is for the American Civil War. One is for World War I. The biggest is for Prohibition. And then there's a little break for World War II. And those are the only times since 1844, when the T.W. Samuels distillery was founded, up to the present day that the Samuels family has not been making whiskey. So kind of fun, just a little point of trivia. I won't go super deep into the process of Makers, but we are a wheated bourbon. So we use wheat instead of the more traditional rye as our secondary or flavor grain. We use soft red winter wheat. And that just gives you like some kind of creamy honeyed notes, a little bit of caramel density, softness on the palate, and no harshness or bitterness on the finish. So that was Bill Sr.'s taste vision. He wanted something that was approachable, subtle, but still complex and flavorful. So they started distilling. 1954, we turned the stills on, and we've made Maker's Mark the same way ever since. We've done, I think, some industry-leading and really exciting stuff with wood science innovation, tapping into the organic chemistry of flavor, trying to figure out how we can pull more flavors and aromas out of different types of oak. So that's all a lot of fun. But the classic product is the same thing that we've made since day one. It is an agricultural product. So Whiskey Acres was talking about how they started as a grain producer, a farm. We've worked with some of the same agricultural partners since day one. So all of our wheat is sourced from about 7 miles up the road from Maker's Mark, right in Loretto, Kentucky, or the outlying area, from the Peterson Wheat Farm. So family friends, and we've worked with them now for 3 generations. Anyhow, so we'll get into making the Boulevardier. So this is a classic cocktail, one of my favorite bourbon cocktails. I don't know if you've, somebody says they've never met Rob. You should meet Rob Samuels. He's a really passionate and amazing dude. Maker's Mark is owned by Beam Suntory. We're part of that portfolio, but kind of siloed off. So I work directly for Rob Samuels and reporting to the distillery. Rob is the grandson of the founders, and it really feels like working for a medium-sized family business. So I feel really fortunate about it. So we're going to do a Boulevardier. This is an old cocktail that dates back to the 1920s. Oh, and as for bartending bona fides, for whatever it's worth, before I worked for Maker's Mark, I actually ran bars and restaurants in Chicago for many years. So I was the opening bar director at a place called The Aviary, which has won a James Beard Award. Was the general manager of and creative director for the Barrel House Flat, which received a lot of national attention. We're fortunate to do that, and bartended at Sportsman's Club and Sable, and then also ran some properties for 16 on Cedro as a beverage director for Deus Ex, Punch House, and Thalia Hall. So if you've been to those places, you might have had a drink from me. So the drink we're going to make, the Boulevardier, was created in about 1925 by Harry McElhoney at Harry's New York bar in Paris, France. So Harry McElhoney was a Scottish bartender who worked in the United States and then was displaced during Prohibition and moved over to France and ended up buying that bar. It's still open, maybe the most famous bar in the world. So he created the recipe that we're trying now, the Boulevardier, which is essentially a bourbon version of a slightly older classic cocktail called the Negroni. Created in the mid-20s, it first went into print, the Boulevardier did, in 1927 in a cocktail book called Cocktails and Barflies. So anyhow, so the Negroni is the immediate antecedent, and then if you use gin, it's a Negroni. If you substitute bourbon or possibly rye whiskey, it turns it into a Boulevardier. So I put in 1.5 ounces of Maker's Mark already. I'm going to add 1 ounce of sweet vermouth. I'm using Cocchi di Torino. You can use whatever vermouth you prefer. I really like this one in a Boulevardier just because it has these nice kind of cola spice notes. And I think it works really well with the general flavor profile. And then I'm going to do 1 ounce of Campari. So Campari is a bitter aperitif from Italy. Some of you are probably pretty familiar with it. This is flavored with bitter orange peel, gentian root. It's got a moderate bitterness, but a really big citrus and herbal flavor profile, very complex. So I've got those. You can't really see because I'm sitting down and adding things, but I've got a mixing glass here and my julep strainer. Been using a jigger to measure things out. So I'm going to add some ice to the shaker tin. And we'll stir this up to get it properly chilled and diluted. The whole idea when you shake or stir a cocktail is to achieve an axis point of appropriate temperature and dilution. I'm going to give it probably 25-ish, 30 rotations here. And you can serve a Boulevardier up or on the rocks, whatever you prefer. I'm going to go ahead and put it into a rocks glass and serve it over ice. So strain it in there. Then I'm going to garnish it with just a little twist of lemon. So I've got a swath of lemon peel that I've pre-cut just with a vegetable peeler. You can also use orange peel. It's kind of interchangeable, whatever you prefer. We'll just give this a little expression over the top. It doesn't seem like it would do a whole lot, but when you express these aromatic oils over the glass, it really provides this enormous aromatic lift. It changes the entire complexion of the drink. And I'll just slide that right in there. So we've got the peel now inserted in the glass, and that is a Boulevardier. Please feel free to reach out with any questions about that drink or about makers or anything else. I'm going to go ahead and put my my email address in the chat, and seriously, if you want to hit me up and go into more detail or depth about anything I mentioned, I would love it if you did so. Beyond that, just want to say thank you to all of our other sponsors, all the presenters, and everybody who put their energy into this amazing cause. So please continue to support it, and thanks for tuning in.
Greg, thanks, brother. That was awesome. Great. I never knew that about the SIV. That's very cool. I've kind of always wondered too, and I never had any idea that had such a strong connection to Bill and his family and the original bottling. Very cool. Some of the 46. This is the 10-year anniversary one, right? It's 10 years of the 46.
Right. Yeah. So Maker's Mark 46 is so for the first 56 years we were in operation, Carmen. We just made one product. It was just classic Maker's Mark. The son of the founders, Bill Samuels Jr., took over the brand in 1975. His dad gave him one instruction, and it was don't mess up the whiskey. And so as he built Maker's Mark from a tiny little regional brand, I said the Whiskey Acres reminds us of where we come from. For the first 20 years that Maker's Mark was in operation, we were a very small craft brand. We were only sold in Kentucky and a little in southern Indiana. So Bill Jr. took over the brand, methodically, brick by brick, built it into obviously a commercial juggernaut now. Even though I will say we still hand dip every bottle, we still hand cut every label with a vintage printing press, and so we try to maintain connection with those craft roots. But before Bill Jr. retired, just about 10 years ago, maybe 11 years ago, he had this realization that even though he'd taken care of his parents' vision, and even though he'd grown it commercially, he hadn't left his imprint on the bourbon world. He hadn't articulated his unique taste vision. So Maker's 46 grew out of that realization. And you know, we pioneered a wood finishing process where we use French oak staves. Staves are like the planks of wood that you build a barrel out of, and immerse those seared virgin French oak staves into a fully matured barrel of Maker's Mark. Let it rest, and the French oak, which has a totally different chemical profile than American oak, imparts different nuances. And so 46 was, I think we've never done a great job of telling the story, but it was the first full-time commercial wood finishing release. So that's become a much more dynamic and popular subcategory, and it feels pretty cool to be the inception point. And that's really the jumping off point for all the wood science and you know, flavor chemistry innovation work that we've done over the last decade. So 10 years as of June since we released it.
Awesome, great stuff. And I love the Boulevardier Old Fashions in Manhattan's. I think get all the headlines, but the Boulevardier is great. So good job, Greg. We appreciate it. Anybody with questions, hit up Greg too. He's going to put his email. Make sure you dump your email in the chat so everybody can see it. All right, brother?
Will do.
Thanks, Greg. Yeah, I moved on to the Thanks, buddy. I moved on to the Maker's 46. I've got that in here now. I started with some Whiskey Acres Artisan series. This is the maple. They finished their bourbon in maple syrup barrels. It's phenomenal. So now I'm on to some of the Maker's 46. And I love it. This is the 10-year. So for anybody wondering how this all came to be back in 2015 when we started, it's because I have, like many people participating tonight, and like many people that have come out all these years to support this great cause, I have a connection to cystic fibrosis. My brother Lou and my sister-in-law Mary have two boys, Michael and Dylan. They are 13 and 11. They both have cystic fibrosis. I could go on and on about them. I do a lot when people are around, when they ask, usually every year when I address the crowd briefly at Binny's for Bourbon and Bacon, but we have something even better. So to tell the story of Mikey and Dylan are Mikey and Dylan and Lou and Mary. So I will turn it over to the video.
Mikey's 12. He is this thoughtful, analytical kid. He's such an inspiration in terms of what he can do with soccer, and he's done 2 triathlons.
I think I've been playing soccer for 8 years. My dad used to play a lot. When I was little, I had a ball, and I think I kicked it around, and I started to like it a lot.
Ready? Yep.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had my infusion today, but every other week they give me 3 shots, and I've been doing it for so long, and I think it's really helped. I have cystic fibrosis.
Mary would always do first day of school, like hold up the sign of what do you want to be when you grow up. And Michael's was always, I want to be a pro soccer player. And he's really good at soccer. And so like the thing that excites me is the potential of actually like realizing that.
Dylan is just this free spirit, energetic wrecking ball. He walks in a room and he just is hysterical and full of life.
My mom told me we need to get me into a sport, and so for some random reason she chose gymnastics.
He's in the gym between 12 and 15 hours every week.
So with Michael, it was interesting. When Mary was pregnant, the hospital did a blood test and they said, hey, you carry this gene, this mutated gene for cystic fibrosis.
Words I will never forget, probably nothing, but we should have your husband tested.
So I went in and had a blood test. And so we knew while she was still pregnant with Michael that we were both carriers of this gene. And there's actually a 75% chance that we would not both pass on that mutated gene. But now we had 2 kids and they both have cystic fibrosis.
Step. Temple rest.
It makes me feel better knowing I'm not alone. Knowing that I'm not the only person that has it and has to deal with it.
There's a lot of rules about people with CF being a certain distance apart. With kids, you know, our doctors told us, and it was good advice, they're brothers. Like, you're gonna have to let them be brothers. We try to be careful about a lot of things. They never drink out of the same cup, but they're brothers and they wrestle and fight and mess around.
They'll go in and blow their pulmonary function tests, and one will blow, and then the other will be like, well, I'm gonna beat you.
I think he beat me last time by like 1 or 2.
These last couple times I have not been doing good, remember?
He's doing fine.
You're supposed to be around like 110.
It's also because I'm older.
These two kids are gonna have each other in all of it, and they're gonna understand each other in a way that no one else in this world will. Our boys are in the last 10%. And so we're in this fight, we're in this ring until the very last patient has a cure.
I always say that the thing I loved about the boys is they both have big dreams. And I try to support that idea of like, have the big dreams, boys, because I don't want them to feel like this disease can somehow hold them back from that.
We've always told our kids, you write your story. You don't let anyone else define you, and CF will not define you. So proud of you, honey. I love you so much. I'll be back. Do you need anything, sweetie?
Really fine, thank you.
It's a very labor-intensive disease to manage. Mary and I will often say it's kind of a grind.
It's, you know, an hour in the morning, typically an hour in the evening. They're really good boys, and they definitely follow the regimen, but it's a lot.
That's the scary part, I think, when I think about the future. As they get older, as they get into college, they're going to be on their own, and it's going to be their responsibility to do their treatments. And so adherence with that treatment regimen is a real challenge that everybody in the cystic fibrosis community faces when their kids get to a certain age. There are certainly a lot of those days where, you know, one of them is facing an infection, or all of a sudden their lung function just dropped, and you're trying to figure out what's going on here, and are we going to have to admit him?
Michael has been inpatient 6 times for CF exacerbations. Dylan's been admitted 1 time. He spent his first day of first grade in the hospital.
And the reality of what the disease is kind of sets in that moment.
I don't let it in very often.
It's a bit frustrating at times to say, hey, we've put in all this work, we've seen amazing progress, but there's nothing yet, you know, for my boys.
The foundation feels like family who's in this fight with us.
It's not like me to just have blind optimism towards something. I'm very skeptical, but I absolutely believe that we're doing the right things to find a cure. And I really, in my heart of hearts, believe we are going to find something for that entire last 10%, and we're not going to stop working until we do it.
Thank you for everything that you've already done for us in finding a cure.
Same.